So I wanted to talk with the results coming out this week, as the beginning of bar exam results around the country, about this idea of 5 things that you shouldn't believe about bar exam results. And it's a pretty significant time and topic because there's a lot of misinformation that exists out there. And so I've identified 5 things that I don't want you to believe about bar exam results. Whether you're a first-time taker, repeat bar taker, whether you're waiting for your results or you're just in the bar exam right now. So stay with me here and let's talk about these 5 things. I'm going to try and tell you what I think you need to know, not just what you don't want to know. All right, so here's the first thing you shouldn't believe. The first statement you shouldn't believe is that because the multi-state bar examiners changed from 190 true questions to 175 questions on the exam, that caused results on the MBE to decline. That's not true at all. Now, prior to this, a little bit of background is that in the very early days of the multi-state bar exam, it's always been a 200 question test, but in the early days, only 175 answers counted at the beginning, and 25 of the questions were called evaluation questions. The examiners needed to create evaluation questions, a test bank of questions that they could use later. Shortly after that, in the early 1970s, they bumped that number up, I think, to 180, and then eventually to 190 questions that actually counted on the exam. And it stayed at 190 for a very long period of time. Then this year, they made another change back down to 175 questions. Well, that created a sort of a level of chaos for bar takers that was unnecessary. And we talked a lot about it at the time. And we said, look, this is mostly an inside baseball kind of problem. The change from 190 questions that count to 175 that count won't actually make much of a difference in the overall score. And the reason for that is that the bar examiners have 2 numbers that they look at. One of them is the raw score. That's the number you get correct out of the questions that counted, in this case, 175. Now, obviously, with 15 less questions available, that number is going to go down for almost everyone. But the second number, the number that actually counts, is a scaled score. And the scaled score is created by taking the raw scores and comparing them to raw scores on selected questions from the exams back in 1971. That's really how it's done. It's an equivalency creation, and it's very sophisticated. And I would say the National Conference is as good at this as any standardized test makers in any field. The SATs, the GREs, any of those, the LSATs for sure. The National Conference has probably done a better job than anyone. So what they do is they create an equivalent level so that every test, whether you took it in the 70s or the 80s or the 90s, I feel like a disc jockey, the greatest hits of the 70s, 80s, and 90s, all in one spot. But you get the idea. And then in the 2000s, well, okay, now what? And in the, whatever we're in now, the 10s, what is happening at 175 questions? Well, the answer is not much. It didn't change much. The scale went way up. Now, the examiners did an interesting thing with reporting results. They went to what we call a little sleight of hand. I'm not a magician, but I think, what is the name? It's the prestige, I think they call it. What they did is in the score reports, instead of actually showing what numbers you got correct, they said, here's how you stack up against all the other multi-state bar takers in the country on this test. It's a percentage score. What? They haven't done that before. That's brand new. So I actually had people in Florida who were like, what is this number? What is this box I'm getting, this grid? Well, you're going to see it. In the UBE, you're going to see it everywhere. You're going to see it that produces results. It really is designed, I guess, to make you feel like there's some relative number, but it's not the number you got correct. And it's just a way of showing where you stand relative to everyone else. And it's the relative score, the scaled score, that actually makes the difference. So what did all that mean when it came out? Well, this week, we got the official reporting from the National Conference that the mean multi-state score, so the mean score, has actually gone down by 0.9 of 1 point. Now, I got to tell you that there was great gnashing of teeth. One commentator, one journal said it's a shockingly poor performance. Really? 0.9 of 1 point? I mean, it's not anything to write home about. It's nothing to be excited about. I mean, I don't think anybody's going, yay, it went down by 0.9 of a point, but shockingly poor. I don't know. I mean, the multi-state continues to be about what it's been. Now, it's not great. It's not a great score, but it's just 1 point. So here's the connection. Unless you failed the bar exam by 1 point, it didn't make any difference. Now, I do know some people that failed by a point or two, and it may have made a difference for that very small group of people. But if you failed the bar by 10 or 15 or 20 or 100 points, it didn't make any difference at all. So don't wrap yourself around the axle of, well, there were only 175 questions that counted. It didn't make any difference in the scaled score. It may have made a difference. It clearly made a difference in your raw score, but you got a compensation. You got a bump, a higher scale, because they're equivalating. I'm making up words. They are making it equal to what was done back in the 1970s. And that's the purpose of the scale. And by the way, when we talk about scaled scores, it's not one level number across the board. It's a rolling scale, and you get more scale points the lower your raw score is, which is kind of, it makes you feel better, but it's really not it's not enough to cause you to pass. So I don't know. But anyway, that's the reality of the number. So the first thing you shouldn't believe about bar results is that the change from 190 to 175 was devastating and shockingly poor. No, it really didn't make much of a difference at all. Okay. The second thing you shouldn't believe about bar results is that they are an indication that what you should do is follow the crowd. Now, you got to stick around with me on this one. This is a little weird, but here's the way the logic goes. Well, bar results are bad, so I want to stay with the crowd. I want to do what the crowd is doing so that I can be successful, because obviously the crowd must be right because the crowd's always right. I'm wondering about that now that I'm looking at politics in America. But nonetheless, when it comes to the bar exam, that is absolutely untrue. And here's I think, a reasonably good example. I took the Florida bar results and I did a little bit of extrapolation to try and show you why following the crowd is not really a good plan. In Florida, for those of you that don't know, the first-time bar taker pass rate for February was 57%. Okay, that's pretty awful. That's the lowest it's been in a very long time. There were 751 first-time bar takers. Now, what's interesting is that Florida always tells you how many total bar takers there are. This year, they're not doing that. Why? Well, because that overall number is actually so low that I don't think they're really anxious to put it out there. But here's the interesting part. 751 first-time bar takers, 57% pass rate. Historically, there are about 1,600 people that take the February bar exam in Florida. Now, if we've got some Florida bar takers from February and you know what that exact number was, feel free to jump in on the chat box and let me know. But I think it's about 1,600 total bar takers. There are more, that means at 1,600 total bar takers, that there were more people who were repeat bar takers than there were first-time bar takers. Okay, by my estimates, probably 850 or so repeat bar takers. That is true in every jurisdiction that I've been able to discover so far. It's true in Tennessee. I think it's true in Pennsylvania. I think it was true in Missouri as well. I think that's just the reality. There are more repeat bar takers than there are first-time bar takers. All right, now, stay with me. If everyone's following the crowd, and most people are, the crowd basically takes one of three big box bar reviews, and you all know who they are. I don't need to name them and get myself more aggravation from their campus reps. But the three big box bar reviews generally contain about somewhere on the order of 90% of all bar takers. All right, I'm being told it's 1,881. Great. Even more, makes the case even more. So if there are 1,881 total bar takers and 751 were first-time takers, that means there were 1,100 and, somebody do the math for me, 1,130 repeat bar takers, okay? That's a lot of repeaters, all right? That's a lot of repeaters. Now, everyone, 90% of the people are taking the big box bar reviews, who are all teaching the same, what I call CRM method. It means cram, recite, and memorize. And you can put those initials any way you want, but basically it's cram for 6 or 7 weeks, recite everything back on the exam, and memorize like crazy. That cram, recite, memorize style produced an overall pass rate then by our extrapolations of about 30% in Florida. That's the overall. That's not the first time rate. That's the overall rate. So if the people who passed if we even give all of the people who passed to the 3 big box bar reviews, which obviously isn't true because we had plenty of people that passed, and I'm sure there are others who self-studied or took other approaches and passed the exam, the big box bar reviews are at a stunningly low pass rate, like 35 to 40%. That's the best. That's the best. So if you're following the crowd, if you're doing what the crowd is doing, you're in trouble. I mean, statistically, empirically, the crowd isn't doing so well. And I'm not saying that anybody's got, had somebody say to me the other day, I heard that a company in California says they got a 97% pass rate on the California bar exam. No, they don't. No, they don't. But outside of that kind of, just blatant lying, I think the reality is that anyone that says that they should be following the crowd, doing the big box approach, can't be doing it because they say it's successful, because it's not successful. It's not even close to successful. And the numbers are really beginning to bear this out because so many people are failing now. It's just obvious that it's not just first-time takers. I mean, even if we gave them the first-time taker rate, it's not spectacular. But when we add in all the bar takers, wow, that number comes way down, comes way, way down. And I think that's what we're going to see across the country. So the second thing I would tell you is that when you see bar results, if you think the answer for me is to follow the crowd, well, that is really a bad strategy because the crowd is going right over the cliff right now. And it's becoming increasingly clear and increasingly obvious. And I know, as I speak to those of you in our course, that's an obvious point. But for those of you who may be listening later, I really encourage you to think very carefully about what you're doing, because you are literally taking an approach, if you're using one of these big boxes that cram, recite, and memorize, that is just not producing. It's not giving you results at all. So there you go. A little bit of math. All right. The third thing that you should not believe about bar results. Oh, this is going to irritate some people. Okay. Preach it, Brother Jackson. The third thing is law school bar prep classes help. No, they don't. No, they don't. I think it's one of the great ripoffs of all time. Let me explain this for those of you that are not familiar with the concept. You're in law school and you're in your 3rd year or 4th year of law school, and you're told you have to take a bar prep class as one of your classes to graduate. Now, when you show up for this class, a couple of things have happened. One is you had to pay tuition dollars for it, which means it is an extremely expensive bar review, extremely expensive. And if you're financing it, well, I don't even want to talk about what that's going to cost you over the time. Secondly, it's either a private branded, big box bar review that's privately branded, hint, hint, ha, 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 or it's just explicit. We're using, this company's bar review course to teach. Except that they don't really bring in the bar review professionals. They bring in somebody that's typically a former graduate of that school who needed a job, and they're trying to boost their job statistics. And they took that course, and now they're just reciting it or they're reading the scripts. In any event, these bar review prep courses now take your time, your money, and they offer you very little. I mean, really very little. And then when you're done, here's the crazy part. You got to go buy a bar review to study for the bar exam. So you got to pay for it twice. Does this make any sense at all? I mean, if I had a limited amount of time and tuition dollars, which I think most of us do when we're in law school, I want to spend it, particularly in my 3rd year, taking classes that actually are interesting to me, that make a difference to me. I can't imagine having given up any credit hours in my last year of law school so that I could take a bar prep class. I mean, how ridiculous would that be? And by the way, they don't do that at top 10 law schools. Okay. They're not doing that at Virginia and at Michigan and at Stanford and at Harvard and at Yale. It's not happening. Not happening at Georgetown. It's not happening really in the top tier law schools at all. It's primarily happening in the bottom tier law schools and the for-profit law schools. And I'm not saying that those schools are bad. I'm just saying it's really an incredible game that's going on because the bar review is paying the law school a fortune. The law school is paying the bar review to have people in their class. And then they say, buy your bar review when you get out of the class and take it all over again. And truthfully, when you look at the results, oh, I know, there's a few schools that go, oh, look, we got, better than 57% pass rate. So our bar prep class must be working. let me just share with you that one of the things, and this is now the basis of a lawsuit that's been filed against several different law schools, is that these schools actually paid students that they thought would fail the bar to not sit for the bar right out of law school so that they wouldn't count as first-time takers. Interesting, huh? Because if you graduate and you don't take the bar right after you graduate, under the statistics and the reporting, you're no longer a first-time taker, even though it's your first time taking the bar. So you can literally manipulate your class in such a way that you're safe, okay? So law school bar prep helps, and not so much. All right, 2 more to go here. The next one is the first-time taker bar pass rates matter. That's the number you should be focused on. That is not something you should believe. Why? Well, I've already explained. There are more repeat bar takers in the United States than there are first-time takers. The real number that you want to be watching for, whether you're looking at results or you're getting ready and you're just sort of checking out the world, you want to look at overall bar takers and what the overall rate is. Because what's happened is that we've gone from a world in which we had mostly first-time takers who mostly passed, and that would be what we saw 5-10 years ago, to a world now where we've got mostly repeat bar takers. More than a majority of bar takers are repeaters. And the overall number for repeaters and for the overall bar exam population is declining significantly. And so if all you're reading about is first-time pass rates, you are only getting a sliver of the story. So for example, in Florida, when the results came out, every story that came out said 57% pass rate. Well, no, it's really not. It's really more like a 32, 33% pass rate. But that's not the story that's being told. And so I want you to be able to see that bigger story and not be blinded by the first-time bar taker rates. It's a manipulated number in many cases for the reason I've just described, among others. And it's not accurate. It doesn't reflect all the people taking the bar. And so to me, if it's not everybody that's taking the bar, what good does it do to give you that number? Okay. And then the last thing I think you shouldn't believe about bar results is that published pass rates are accurate. You know, I mentioned earlier that there's a company out in California that's parroting this ridiculous pass rate. And it's a big company. And it's like, and somebody said this to me the other day, and I said, okay, all right, let's just for a minute assume that that's true. How would they know that in California? Or how would they know it in Florida, where there is no published list of bar takers who passed? It is no longer published in virtually any state, the list of people who pass. Why? Because of privacy reasons. There was a time when all that happened. That does not happen now. And so as a result, how do you know who's passing or not passing? Well, you self-report. And self-reporting is very dangerous. I can tell you after 25 years, 50 exams, self-reporting is completely insane. There are people that buy the course and we never hear from them again. We don't know if they took the exam. We don't know if they passed the exam or failed the exam. We have no knowledge. How do we count them? We have people that buy the course but never open the box. Do we count them? We have people that buy the course but do other things in addition to that. Do we count them? We have people who tell us that they're first-time takers when they're actually repeat bar takers. Do we count them? I don't know. I have no idea how to count that. Do I count people that only did 75% of the course? That's what one company does. Do I count people that submitted X number of assignments or put in X number of hours that they logged in on the computer to say that they did the course? I don't know. You see, nobody knows that. In addition, there isn't a sample size big enough for any one exam to be able to tell that. If we take 15 or 20 students in a smaller jurisdiction, that's not enough to really generate a pass rate for that one exam. Now, over 25 years, we've done enough that we're pretty confident that we do better than the average across the board based on self-reporting. But truthfully, if everyone that self-reports doesn't tell us the truth, well, I don't know. It could be different. I can tell you that we, because of our pass guarantee, have a pretty good way of telling who didn't pass, but there are people who fail and just disappear. They just give up. And we have no way of knowing that, nor does anyone else. And so when you believe that published pass rates are what you should make a decision about when it comes to selecting a bar review or deciding what to do or even where to go in terms of a jurisdiction, I think that's not a good basis for any of those decisions because the information itself is inherently suspect. There is no one that has that rate except the National Conference of Bar Examiners and the bar examiners of each state. And by the way, your law school only has numbers for your law school. That's it. And if they're playing games like some of these law schools have been charged with, then we don't even know that those numbers are right. And so as a result, you really cannot take at face value any of these pass rate numbers. And so if you're talking to somebody and they say, my pass rate is 95%, really? How'd you figure that out? Really? Over what time? With what number of people? In what circumstances? Who did you include and who did you exclude? I just don't think you can do it. And I say that not because I'm trying to make excuses, but just because it's reality. And I think people kind of lose sight of that sometimes. And so they get drawn into this debate about what pass rates are. Well, we don't really know. The National Conference of Bar Examiners produces a monograph of each year's bar results. It comes out long after the last results in July. So it's a lagging indicator. We've just now got that monograph for 2016. That is the only official statistic of the number of bar takers and the pass rates. And it's available on the ncbx.org website. You can find it. Contact us. We'll be glad to give it to you, and we'll put a link in as well. But that's the only numbers that you should rely on. It's the only numbers that are even close to accurate, and even those aren't entirely accurate for the reasons we've talked about. So there are 5 things you shouldn't believe about bar results. You shouldn't believe that this change in the 175 score made a big difference. It did not. You shouldn't believe that following the crowd is going to lead you to success. It does not statistically. You shouldn't believe that taking a law school bar prep class will actually help you. There's no empirical evidence to prove that either. You shouldn't believe that the first-time bar taker pass rate actually matters. It's manipulated and it's incomplete. And finally, you shouldn't believe that published pass rates are ever accurate. I think at best they're puffery, whether they come from a law school or a bar review or a mentor or a tutor or some other source. Well, you're just a bunch of fun, cheery stuff today, aren't you, Jackson? Yeah. Listen, here's what you need to do. Put your head down, do the work, study, follow the plan, do the best work you can, and trust that the company that you're working with and the bar review teacher and provider that you're with are honest and have integrity. And if you're doing that, I think that you're okay. And then do what they tell you to do.